Okay, so we previously talked about all the characteristics of parabolas and quadratics. Y-intercept, axis of symmetry, vertex, min, max, including x-intercepts. Today we are going to start solving for x-intercepts. X-intercepts are also known as solutions, so they might tell you to find the solution. They also might tell you to find the zero. And we talked about them being parts of a root. So if you remember roots from factoring, it'll make sense when we get to the factoring method. The first method we're going to learn out of about 5 methods is graphing. When you see it on a graph, it's super simple to find the x-intercepts. It's just where it crosses the x-axis. So here is an x-intercept, and here is an x-intercept. You can write it as x-intercepts are -4 and 2. You can also write them as coordinate points, -4, 0, and 2, 0. They are zeros for your y's because they cross the x-axis, meaning your y is 0. Another one is right here. You sometimes only have one x-intercept, which is fine. So your x-intercept would be 2 or 2, 0. Your last option for quadratics would be to have no intercepts. So this parabola is not crossing the x-axis at all, so it's no intercepts. I know number 4 is not a parabola, but it is a function, so it has more than one 0 because it's crossing the x-intercept 1, 2, 3 times. So your x-intercepts here, or your zeros here, are -3, 0, 0, 0, or 2, 0. Also written as -3, 0, 2. Okay, so even if you just got a different type of function, you can find the zeros, or the solutions, or the x-intercepts. They all mean the same thing by just finding where they cross the x-axis. The second method you're going to learn about is taking the square root. You can only use this method when there's no b term. So your equation or your function would look something like this. So there's no b term, so you won't see the bx values. One thing we have to remember is you can have 0 solutions, you can have 1 solution, or you can have 2 solutions. When you take the square root of something, we have to always have a plus or minus available because there could be 2 solutions. A couple other things to remember. The square root of a negative number does not exist, which means it does not cross the x-axis, and there are no x-intercepts when you have the square root of a negative number. Another thing you need to remember is the square root of a fraction can also be written as the square root of x divided by the square root of y. Okay, so our first example here, 3x squared equals 75. We would solve it just like we would for any other equation. So inverse operations, to get x by itself, I have to divide by 3 first. X squared equals 25. To get x by itself, I have to take the square root of both sides. So the square root of x squared equals plus or minus the square root of 25. And remember, I addressed the plus or minus up here. They cancel out over here, so x equals plus or minus the square root of 25 is 5. Which means x equals a positive 5 and x equals a negative 5. That's what that plus or minus symbol means. You can have both. And think about it. Isn't 5 squared 25? Negative 5 squared is also 25. Number 3, I'm just going to go this way. I can subtract 4 from both sides, leaving 3x squared equals -27. Divide both by 3. X squared equals -9. I can take the square root of both sides, which means x equals plus or minus the square root of -9. But remember, I can't have a negative number underneath that square root, so no solutions, which means there's no x-intercepts, because we can't have a negative underneath the square root. Jump down, subtract 1, 2x squared equals 16. Divide by 2. X squared equals 8. We take the square root of both sides. When we take the square root of both sides, I have to include that plus or minus in the front, because remember, you could have two solutions. They cancel out here. X equals plus or minus. Since the square root of 8 is not a perfect square, I'm going to leave it as the square root of 8. Square root of 8 is somewhere around 2.33-ish. So you're going to have a positive 2.33 or a minus 2.33. But I want the square root in your answer. Alright, number 4, we solve it just like any equation like we've been doing. We add 3 to both sides. Divide both sides by 3. Square root, x equals plus or minus the square root of 8. I'm going to tell you, this is where you're going to get it wrong if you forget to include the plus or minus. That means x equals a positive square root of 8 and x equals a negative square root of 8. There will be two x-intercepts on that graph. Okay, so from there, let's try a few more examples. Let's look at number 5. Number 5, the first thing I would want to do is get rid of that positive 3, so subtract the 3 to the other side, leaving negative 5x squared equals negative 12. Divide both sides by negative 5. X squared equals 12 over 5, because those two negatives cancel. I take the square root of both sides to get rid of the square there, leaving x equals plus or minus square root of 12 over 5. Try a few by yourself. The answer key is going to be on Classroom for you. And then we are going to learn another method. One more I probably want to do with you is number 9. You can try them by yourself if you don't want to, but just come back and check your answers. Add 4, 1/5 x squared equals 10. To get rid of that 1/5, remember I multiply by the reciprocal. X squared equals 50. Take the square root of both sides. X equals plus or minus 50. And then that would be your final answer. Okay, go ahead, check your answers yourself. Have a good day.